Well, welcome to Scottsdale's annual Founders Day celebration. I'm Joan Fadala, a community historian, and as always, it's great to be celebrating our founder, and this is on the eve of his birthday, which is actually tomorrow. So it's great to be in the shadow of the Little Red Schoolhouse, which he and his wife Helen helped dedicate 115 years ago tomorrow, as well as being within eyesight of the wonderful sculpture by Georgianne Tognani that commemorates Winfield Scott and Helen sitting atop Old Maud, their beloved mule and our first town mascot. So as many of you know, because you've been here for years, Scottsdale observes Founders Day on or near the day that Army chaplain Winfield Scott was born, February 26, 1837. So that's 188 years ago tomorrow. And we call it Founders Day, and I put that parentheses at the end of the S rather than between the R and the S, because I consider Helen Scott to be a co-founder of Scottsdale, and we need to give her as much credit as Winfield for all the things that they did to make our community so wonderful. Together, they planted the seeds of so many of our community traditions and industries, and I certainly consider them our number one power couple. They were role models of community service, and since it's the 115th birthday of the dedication of the Little Red Schoolhouse, Scottsdale's grammar school, we're also celebrating today the Scots as our number one champions of education in Scottsdale. So before I introduce our speakers, I'd also like to acknowledge a number of individuals and groups that have sustained Scottsdale history, and Founders Day for many years. We're certainly happy to have Mayor Lisa Borowski with us today, as well as Councilwoman Marianne McAllen. And did I miss any current serving council members? We're also happy to have some past council members, past Mayor David Ortega, Don Pryor, and David Smith. And let's see, did I miss any other past serving council members? Oh, and there's former Mayor Sam Campana. Thank you for coming. A group known as the Friends of Winfield Scott began this Founders Day over 3 decades ago under the leadership of the late Roberta Pilcher, who promoted Scottsdale history through her entire life and also served on the city council. In fact, some of you will remember she served her 6 months, and the way that she was selected was her name was drawn out of a cowboy hat to put her on the council. How Western can you get, right? We also want to give a very special thanks to the Winfield Scott chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, who have been providing refreshments for the birthday party today as well as many years in the past. And the DAR's community service activities continue to honor the memory of Winfield and Helen Scott through their lives of service and patriotism. I also want to thank the volunteers of the Scottsdale Historical Society, led by Jason Song, whom you'll hear from a little later. They've been keeping the stories of Chaplain and Mrs. Scott and the history of Scottsdale alive since they organized in 1968. And thank goodness they organized, because the Little Red Schoolhouse was in danger of being torn down for an urban renewal project. And so the Scottsdale Historical Society organized the summer of 1968 in order to save the Little Red Schoolhouse, which is now one of our most beloved historic properties. I hope you'll have a chance after this and in the coming days and weeks to visit the museum, and it has a brand new baseball exhibit that I know you'll enjoy. So now let's celebrate the life and legacy of Chaplain Winfield Scott, and I am honored to present Mayor Lisa Borowski.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you for having me here. First, happy Founders Day. We ordered Chamber of Commerce weather, and this can be a more beautiful setting and day to be out and be especially here for this amazing celebration. So as a lifelong Scottsdale resident, I am just so first honored to be here, but also I'm so pleased that our community and individuals like yourself, Joan, and many others here keep these traditions alive, which are such a big part of the fabric of our community. We may be young, but we have some historical traditions that are very, very important to us that we see a lot around this time of year. And on the 115th birthday celebration, I grew up in Scottsdale Public Schools, not quite this old, but big part of my past as well. So congratulations on this. And today we have a special proclamation. Oh, I also want to thank the Scottsdale Historical Society for keeping, again, this tradition alive. It means a lot to all of us. So thank you very much. And I've brought a proclamation here today, and I'd like to read that to you. Whereas the Scottsdale Unified School District was formed in 1956 with Winfield Scott, John Tate, and Frank Titus, comprising the first school board, and the town hand-built the one-room wooden schoolhouse located on the property east of the little schoolhouse. And whereas the Scottsdale co-founder, Winfield Scott, was elected to serve on the Arizona Territorial Legislature and appointed to the Arizona Board of Regents, 1902 to 1904, including time as Chancellor of the University of Arizona. And whereas in 1908, the voters of Scottsdale unanimously approved a $5,000 bond issue to build a brick building to replace the one-room Scottsdale Grammar School. Helen Scott, a teacher and poet, helped voters get to the polling place by driving them in her horse and buggy. Wow, the good old days. Whereas Scottsdale dedicated the building on February 26, 1910, as the Scottsdale Grammar School on Chaplain Winfield Scott's 73rd birthday, Chaplain Scott was known to visit the school and share his experiences serving in the Civil War, fighting for the Union as part of the New York 126th Volunteers. And whereas the Scottsdale Grammar School was run as a two-room schoolhouse in Scottsdale from 1910 to 1928, and then as the Coronado School, which we all know and love, for children whose primary language was not English, from 1928 and 1954. And whereas the town of Scottsdale used the building as Scottsdale's town hall, justice court, and the headquarters of the Scottsdale Marshal's Office from 1956 to 1961. And whereas the Scottsdale Parks and Recreation Department and then the Scottsdale Public Library used the building from 1963 to 1968. And whereas the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce renovated and utilized the building from 1973 to 1991, when it became home to the Scottsdale Historical Society, which operates as the Scottsdale History Museum, known as the beloved Little Red Schoolhouse. Therefore, I, Lisa Borowski, Mayor of Scottsdale, proclaim February 25th, 2025 as Founders Day in Scottsdale, recognizing the 115th anniversary of the dedication of the Scottsdale Grammar School on February 26, 1910. This further recognizes founders Winfield and Helen Scott as champions of education in Scottsdale. Thank you very much, and I am presenting this proclamation to, of course, Superintendent of Scottsdale Unified School District, Scott Menzel. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Borowski. It's an honor for me to be here, standing before you as the 27th Superintendent of Scottsdale Unified. I'm just curious, how many of you are graduates of an SUSD school? So, if you look around, this is the legacy that Helen and Winfield Scott left in our community, because when they started the first school in 1896, nearly 130 years ago, they knew the importance of quality public education to ensure that we had a vibrant and thriving community. And today we see the seeds of that sown all over our community because Scottsdale is truly an extraordinary place. So whenever I have an opportunity to find a graduate from Scottsdale Unified School District, I like to present them with an SUSD legacy pin. I do have a couple with me today, but what I want to say is that every day that we continue to invest in our community, we honor the life and legacy of Winfield Scott and Helen Scott, and education is a core component of that vision for what a community could be. So it's just an honor for me to be here to celebrate this day, to recognize the investment that they made, and I wish somehow they could see how far we've come since those days when this school facility was constructed. And we know that the legacy will live on because this community supports that vision for public education, much like our founder did all those years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Borowski and Superintendent Menzel. Well, I think in a few moments you're going to have your wish granted, Dr. Menzel, because we might just have Winfield Scott to come and realize how much this town has grown and how much our education system has flourished. So without further ado, as he ambles forward, may we welcome a modern-day version of our own beloved founder, Chaplain Winfield Scott.
Well, happy birthday to me. Thank you for coming to my party. I want to take you back 150 years ago to Saturday, February 26, 1910, when we had a dedication for the building behind me. Actually, to the side of me. We called it the Scottsdale Grammar School, and you call it the Little Red Schoolhouse. About noon, Helen and I were ready to dedicate this beautiful brick structure. It would see decades of use as a schoolhouse before the community outgrew it. We had no idea it would be reused again and again and still standing 115 years later. As reported in local papers, the events combined a social event, a community celebration, and a day of wonderful speeches. It was the largest celebration in Scottsdale with several hundred people in attendance. That was more people than lived in the small community. But several of the families nearby that would be sending their kids to the schoolhouse came to the celebration. The day began with a big basket picnic. Calling it a picnic might not be entirely accurate because the food was served in the schoolhouse basement in fine style. After an hour and a half of good food and conversation, I called the celebrations to order and prevailed upon the several speakers in attendance to share their thoughts about the importance of education for a new community. Some of the speakers included Arizona Territorial Governor Richard Sloan. He was the first to speak, and he talked about how far our small community had come and to build such a beautiful, splendid schoolhouse. We had Indiana Governor Thomas R. Marshall talked about a well-rounded education for the youth of Scottsdale. And in just 2 short years, Governor Marshall would be elected Vice President of the United States with President Woodrow Wilson. We had several professors who were the principals of different schools, including Tempe Normal School, Phoenix Union High School, and Tempe Union High School. You may be shocked to find out that the principal of Tempe Normal School tried to convince all the parents to send their kids to Tempe Normal School, which today you call Arizona State University. The principal of Phoenix Union High School tried to suggest that everyone in Scottsdale should join the Phoenix Union High School and send their kids to Phoenix Union High School. That didn't go over too well. Finally, General A.J. Sampson gave a patriotic speech about all the places he traveled and all the people that he'd met, and the most impressed he was of any place was Arizona, and the community that he was most impressed with was the lovely village of Scottsdale. If those in attendance in 1910 could have looked into a crystal ball and seen the future, I think they'd be most pleased with how Scottsdale has grown into a prosperous and cultured city. Helen and I are very happy that education is still important in Scottsdale. Thank you, and I hope you all enjoy celebrating my birthday. 188 is the new 125. Thank you.
If only we could all look that good at 188, huh? Oh. Well, thank you so much for your insight and storytelling, Chaplain Scott. And it's an honor to be celebrating your birthday. And be sure to give Helen our best as you make your way back to yesteryear. Now I'm delighted to introduce to you Jason Song, president of the Scottsdale Historical Society and a graduate of Coronado High School. He will be announcing a new award created by the Historical Society and recognizing its first recipients. Jason?
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Joan. We've been working on a new award because we've had some people who have protected history in Scottsdale virtually all their lives. One of them passed recently, and that is what prompted us to want to start this award. The Mowry family, the Mowry sisters are all here today. Stuart, I guess Stuart might, oh, there he is, back in the back. Stuart's mom is the one that passed. The Mowrys have been here a long, long time. I think each and every one of them have worked in the museum or supported it. Eleanor, who's coming up on, I don't think it's her 125th, but it's coming up on her 60th birthday or something like that very soon. She is our treasurer still. Becky flew in from California. Thank you so much for being here. The name of the award is Guardians of Scottsdale's History. Is that right, or am I saying it wrong? Is it good? Bueno. All right, well, thank you so much. It's a great award, it's a great honor. We're going to follow up with it in years to come. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mowry family.
Thanks so much, Jason. And thanks to all of the Historical Society. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the Mowry family. Back in 1968, starting the society when, again, it was threatened to tear down the Little Red Schoolhouse. So one of the things that I might mention, oops, I forgot my prop, is that we are so lucky that in 1975, the city of Scottsdale contracted with local historian Dick Lynch to research and write about Winfield Scott. And this has become the Bible, if you will, of our founder's lifestyle. It's available for sale for a measly $5 in the Little Red Schoolhouse. I'm shamelessly promoting it, and with some caution, because as Marsh Trimble and others know, you'll now know what the source of all of our material is if you read the book. But it is truly inspiring, and again, I commend you to that. So speaking of inspiring, we have Arizona's official historian, a career educator in Scottsdale, author of countless books, and our very special friend Marsh Trimble with us today. And we thank him so much for sharing stories of the colorful characters, places, and events in Scottsdale and Arizona history in both word and song. Marsh, the podium is yours.
Well, thank you, John. It's really good to be here again. It's good to be anywhere again. It's been kind of a rough year last year now, but I'm great now. I had a visitation last night from Winfield Scott, and he said, "Marshall, you're doing it again. Every year you tell a bigger story about me. The last year you had me with a general during the Mexican War." And he said, "Why don't you do something different this time?" So I'm just going to do some random thoughts about some interesting people who came to this town. This is quite a town. My grandparents came here in 1925, all the way from Tempe. Previously, one had been from Arkansas, my mother had been from Arkansas, and my father from San Antonio, Texas. So I just happened to be the first native from the family, but it was well. Let me just say, they moved over, according to Bill Kimsey's book, to the map. They moved over here to the corner of Scottsdale Road, and right across from Scott's house, the old house there, and that was 1925. And in 1926, my grandfather, ran cattle out north of town after the rainy season. It used to rain back then, and he stocked them on the. He only did it right after the rainy season when the grass was growing out there, and it was the site of Stillman Ranch today, and whoever owned the property at the time wasn't the Stillmans, but he offered my grandfather the opportunity to buy that land for $600. That was in 1926, and that was our first mistake as the Trimbles. The other was we should have bought that property over there on the corner of Scottsdale Road and Indian School, but that's. I wrote a piece one time for the paper. It was called "The I Could Have Bought It For" gang, and we all talk about. I'm sure everybody in here and First Liar doesn't have a chance about what they could have bought something for, but going back to 1902, you know, we call ourselves the westmost western town, and we really are. I got into a debate one time with the people out in Bob Bosbell out in Cave Creek about, they said Cave Creek ought to be the westmost western town. So I went out there with a camera on a Saturday night and took a picture of all the motorcycles. And I said, it's the westmost motorcycle town. And leave us alone. And actually, we were still driving cattle down in 1951. We were driving cattle down from the later the Marley Ranch, the D.C. Ranch, right down Scottsdale Road, and those were good times. And I barely remember them because I lived in Ash Fork then. We left the valley and I grew up in Ash Fork, and it was not the westmost western town. In fact, our town was so small. Our driver's education class and our sex education class was both taught in the same school. Same room. Yeah. I'm a little rusty on my lines that I made a living off of for so long. But in 1902, Popcorn John Rubenstein was our first gunfighter. Now, Tombstone had Wyatt and Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo and all the rest of them, but we had Popcorn John Rubenstein. What a name. And he was the mail carrier from Phoenix, delivered the mail out here to Scottsdale. It was about a 2-hour drive in a wagon from Phoenix to to Scottsdale. It's about the same that it takes today, about 5 o'clock on the 101. So anyway, but he had a favorite spot over here, right on that same corner where my grandparents would later live, and he parked his wagon over there, or buggy, and every day at noontime he parked under a tree and had his lunch, and he was very particular. He began to think that was his property after a while. And one day, two fellas, there was Peter, gotta pull out my old helpers here. Oh my gosh, look at that. Never mind. I can't find it. But anyway, they parked their wagons. Two farmers parked their wagons out there, and they were just took his place. And it might be the case in U.S. history of somebody going postal. And so, but anyway, Popcorn John lost it, and he took a gun and shot both of them. Now, I meant to ask Joan today, whatever happened to Popcorn John? Do we know?
He was tried.
He was tried, convicted, I'm sure. Guess he didn't have a good lawyer. I got to watch myself. I get sarcastic once in a while. Anyway, he was convicted. Thanks. I meant to call you about that. But anyway, and a few years later, we had another shooting, an unusual shooting. Al Frederick was the town marshal. And Al shot a chauffeur for a winter visitor right over here at Mexican Imports. And Jason, you could probably tell that story a whole lot better. But anyway, this chauffeur was causing a ruckus, and it was Johnny Moore's pool hall, and that was the Sin City, right, of Scottsdale at that time, Johnny Moore's pool hall. And there are probably some ghosts over there too, Jason, aren't there? And anyway, the chauffeur came at him not with a gun, but with a pool cue. Can you imagine if we were to do reenactments today, we'd have a postman shooting two hay wagons, drivers of hay wagons. How do we connect that to the gunfight at OK Corral? I've been to that many times and narrated some of that stuff, but never anything quite like a pool cue versus a pistol. But it's got to be unusual enough that we ought to commemorate it somehow. But anyway, that was our violent period, and I forgot one thing I was going to say a while ago. When my grandfather ran cows out there, they offered to sell it. And what was his remark? He said, "What in the world do I need that worthless desert land for?" You see, at that time, anything north of the Arizona Canal right out here was considered worthless desert property. And nobody wanted to do anything out there. But think of what you could have bought that for at that time. But again, I could have bought it for. The main thing I wanted to talk about was the I got to watch the time here. I got a $20 Timex watch here on a $2,000 gold nugget. Somebody ever knocks me in the head, they'll take the watch and leave I hope they take the watch and leave the band.
Yeah.
But looking at 19 and what time should I watch for? Am I the only one? Oh, okay. Well.
Put the cupcakes away.
Okay, yeah. We used to have chicken. Eddie Basha used to put chicken out here, and as soon as we smelled the chicken, it was like, "Marshall, get off of that microphone."
Yeah.
And so anyhow, I'm thinking about 1955. The citizens of Scottsdale raised $65,000 to build a new baseball stadium. And in honor of the exhibition, I keep calling them the exhibition games, but that's what we called them then. And they built this, they built a stadium. It was a wooden stadium. Do you remember that? And it was painted green. And I had just come down from Ash Fork the year before, playing on tumbleweed fields and windstorms. I used to throw the ball. I was a catcher. I used to throw the ball to third base when I wanted it to go to second. And when I came down here, I had a heck of a time. I was always throwing the ball to the wrong base. But I was a catcher for the Glendale Grays semi-pro baseball team. And the day after the Orioles left town, we came over here to play the Scottsdale Blues. And that's where I met a man that remained lifetime friend, Roy Coppinger. You remember Roy? A legendary baseball coach. Roy was playing for the Blues, and another kid that was my hero 3 years before, Corky Riddell. And I knew Corky and his brother John. John later became mayor of Camp Verde. But John was on that team too. But 3 years before that, Corky Riddell was pitching for the Tucson Cowboys in the Arizona-Texas League. And I was in high school then, and I remember the Arizona Republic actually came to Ash Fork at that time. Doesn't anymore, but back then. And I'd catch the paper every day to see how Corky Riddell did. He was the most famous baseball player in Arizona at that time. It was Class C. Doesn't sound like much today, but boy, that was all we had. We had two teams in the Arizona-Texas League, the Tucson Cowboys and the Phoenix Senators. And so, but Corky was playing, and he got hot in 1953, and he won 28 games. And he was in all the papers. He was Arizona Pro Athlete of the Year that year. And just a little sidebar on that, Leo DeRocher turned him down because he was too little for the Giants. And yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, but Corky even dated my aunt for a while, but I think she said he drank too much beer for her. But she was a Southern Baptist gal. And so anyway, Corky was in the paper every day. And I heard the rumors was that the Tucson team pitched him every day too, and his arm was gone by the end of the season. But that year when he was Arizona Pro Athlete of the Year, who wins the award? Corky Riddell. Who is the Master of Ceremonies? Leo DeRocher. Oh, Leo the Lip had to present him the award. So we all got a big laugh out of that. Leo probably didn't, but anyway. He was pitching for the Blues, Scottsdale Blues, and I came up to bat, and I thought I was shaking in my shoes, just to think I was batting off of the great Corky Riddell, my hero, 3 years before, and I think I just closed my eyes and swung and slapped a single to right field, and stood on first base, just the proudest guy you could ever think of. And anyway, I batted off the great Corky Riddell. But Riddell Road is right over here from the Riddell family that lived here for many years. But it was a big story for Arizona that year with Scottsdale's own Corky Riddell. And you know what? It came again later with Jim Palmer. And he was the other one. I just thought about Jim this morning, and I got out my books and started looking, and I thought, I got to tell Jim's story, because I was sort of tied in with that somehow too. In 1962, I came to coach baseball at one of the Mesa public schools, and so we were hearing all about this guy named Jim Palmer over at Scottsdale High, and everybody was talking about Jim. And Scottsdale, by the way, was a Class B high school. And in those days, there were only 3 classes when I was in high school. Class A, that was like Phoenix Union and some of those. And Class B, that was like Prescott, and believe it or not, Ash Fork. We had 10 kids in my senior class. And I I tell you, it was a small. It was a. They didn't have many, but they didn't have much in the way of sports, and so here was Jim Palmer for Class B Scottsdale, and Jim was just blowing everybody away, the big schools and the little schools. He was signed up that year with a ball after he graduated, but he was a three-sport all-stater, and guy was a heck of an athlete. And if you go into his backstory, he was born to Irish parents, and his mother was not married, was single, and Jim was put into an orphanage, and his father was just sort of an itinerant, and he was put into an orphanage and grew up, or was later adopted as a. He was just listed in the births as baby, whatever his name was, his Irish name was Kennedy, I think it was, and he was adopted by a kind family. Eventually wound up in Scottsdale, graduated from Scottsdale High School, and it's quite a story. And I used to tell this when I was teaching the Arizona history class at Scottsdale Community College, and the women in the class were just thinking, "Oh, Marshall's telling another baseball story," and then I'd say, "He's the guy that does the jockey shorts." It was Jim clad for years, and handsome as could be, handsome as a movie star, and he was wearing these jockey shorts. And the women, do any of you remember? Any of you women remember? I thought so. Don't try to lie about it. But anyhow, Jim, what's probably one of there are many things. He was the youngest pitcher in baseball to ever win a World Series game. He was just 20 years old when he beat the Los Angeles Dodgers. And who did he beat? The great Sandy Koufax. And he shut him out. And that day, this young 20-year-old kid from Scottsdale said, "The only way I'm going to beat Sandy Koufax today is to shut him out." And that's what he did. Anyway, it's a great story, and I just picked it out of one of my books this morning, and wanted to share it with you in case you didn't know that part of the story. But again, Scottsdale just had a knack for turning out great people. It still does. Well, let's see. I think it's probably time for me to quit. And I had a request here, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for you now. It was I made a good living reciting cowboy poetry around here and everything, and I thought I'd pick out one of my favorites. I hope to God I can still remember it. But when Scottsdale was a farm town, and I lived on a farm in Tempe, and then in Mesa, actually Lehigh, and I had never lived in a city until we moved to Ash Fork. And anyway, that was, where was I? Oh, the poem, yeah. No, the farmers. The great, I meant this because this is just for Scottsdale. This was a farm town too. And these kids that, or the people that worked on these farms are among the greatest of the citizens of the Old West. We don't hear much about them, but they were the ones who planted the crops, and they were the ones who feared, most of all, freezing weather, drought, fires, windstorms, you name it. But there's one thing that they feared most of all, and that was going downtown and talking to a banker. I went to see the banker to borrow me some dough. I went with fear and trembling. I was afraid they'd tell me no. But that old banker, he surprised me. He told me what I'd do. He said, I've got a glass eye. If you can tell which, I'll make that loan to you. Well, I'm sure he had done this before with many an unsuspecting catch. And I'm sure he had won more times and lost, 'cause his eyes were so well matched. How could I tell which eye was glass? Oh, and then I seen the light. It's that one, sir. I'm sure it is. It's the one there on the right. But that banker, he was startled that I could tell so fast. He says, I'll keep my word. You'll get that loan. But tell me, how did you guess? Well, sir, says I done it in this fashion. That one there on the right, that glass eye, it has just a glimmer of compassion. Thank you, poetry lovers, and it's really nice this year to be in the shade for a change. I was going to close with today, but I won't. But no, I will, because I plan to do it anyway. But always remember, hot weather makes people stick together. Thank you all.
Marsh, every year we live on your every word. Thank you so much. So to commemorate this special tribute to Winfield and Helen Scott as champions of education, the city and the library and the Historical Society have put together some wonderful displays of what all the life experiences have been and the many recycles of our beloved Little Red Schoolhouse. So I hope you'll take a look at those collages behind you, as well as pick up a commemorative set of postcards that show the various lives of our Little Red Schoolhouse, as Winfield, as actually the mayor said in her proclamation. Again, I want to thank the DAR, the Historical Society, all of our great speakers, and a special shout out to Dan Miller and his crew from Parks and Recreation that set up the logistics today, the city's graphic design team, and the library and the Historical Society for creating the displays and the commemorative postcards, and the staff of the city's communications, community engagement, and citizen services for organizing this event. I hope in the coming days and weeks that you'll realize there are so many other ways that you can commemorate and enjoy Scottsdale history. Come inside the museum, look at all the new displays, visit the historical room in the Civic Center Library, or go online and see over 11,000 images and oral histories that have been accumulated on the Scottsdale Library and Historical Society's website. There are many historic talks available on the city's cable channel as well as on their YouTube channel. And of course, we recognize the 10th year of Western Spirit, Scottsdale's Museum of the West, that showcases not only Scottsdale, but the history of the Western United States, Mexico, and Canada. So please, another round of applause for our speakers, especially Winfield and Helen Scott. And so now, let's have some birthday cupcakes and enjoy the rest of your day. We look forward to seeing you again next year for Founders Day. Thank you.